Good morning, afternoon, evening. Not sure when you're catching this, but hopefully you are. I'm going to start today's video off with a stupid human trick. It's 1977. We're cruising down the highway in my dad's brand new black Cutlass Supreme, red velour interior, and Bob Seger playing an 8-track. He pulls out an apple out of nowhere, and from the back seat I yell, "Hey, I'd like to have an apple." And he replies, "I'll split it with you." And throws me back the apple. I'm like, oh, I got to learn how to do that. Now, that was just a simple ambrosia apple. You have different levels of difficulty. You have the Gala apple. Not bad. The Fuji. Oh, bear. And I think this is an Opal. Not bad. But then you got the Granny Smith. Large and dense as marbles. Wish me luck. Wet hands. There we go. With that stupidity out of the way, today's video, we have the maintenance of my stepdaughter's Jeep that we did, and a pretty cool Ford GT. Cue the banjo. First things first, let's get the Serpentine Belt off of this car. Now this is a 4-cylinder, no AC. And I've already removed a couple things. This had a added cold air intake to it. I'm not really sure if that does anything for a 4-cylinder Jeep, but there it is. And remove some wires so we can get a better look at this. Let me get the camera in here. Now, this again is the 4-cylinder. It's got no AC on it. It's 94. And what we want to do is take a 15 millimeter to that bolt right there and loosen it. And then we take another 15 millimeter with an extension to this bolt right here and loosen that. And the more we back this bolt off, the more this tensioner pulley will slide and release the tension on this Serpentine belt. So we'll get to that right now, actually. Hey, a Scott tip for you. You know, draw a little diagram of the Serpentine belt for when you take it off. That way there's no questions and you understand how it goes back on. Some of them, this is pretty straightforward, but to just keep up with it, it's a good idea to do. So 15 millimeter. Loosen that. Then loosen this. We're going to loosen this quite a bit actually, just to get the pulley away from it so we get enough room to take this Serpentine belt off. Pretty simple. And again, this doesn't really look that bad. I don't see like one crack inside here. So we're going to replace it because they asked us to replace it. So we're going to replace it, but I don't see anything really wrong with this belt. I'm not sure if this is the source of our squeak or our whine. I'll put this off this side. Not even close. So the father has given me the wrong belt. All right, we'll order another belt and put one on for him. I'm going to stop the tape. I'm going to stop this until we get another belt and we'll pick this back up. This is the way it usually goes. All right, a little bit more drama. The owner gave me ATF4, which is fine. I can use that for the transfer case. I think it takes ATF3 for this year, but ATF4 will be fine. But he wanted the transmission done. And for the transmission, I'll show you on my screen right here. For the rear diff, rear drive, and for the four-wheel drive, we're going to take 75W90. So, yeah, what I'll end up doing is draining that, getting some GL5 7590 weight oil, and replacing that. So once again, I'm going to have to wait a little bit and get that from the parts store and change this out. But I'm going to go ahead and do the transfer case anyway right now. So I'm going to take the transfer case out right now, and not transfer case out, but change the fluid real quick. I think we can use a 1 3/16 socket on there. I think that also translates over to a 30 millimeter on here. Yes, I've already loosened them up, so getting this done shouldn't be a big deal. Oh yeah, this is going to get messy. So quickly, this pump right here will work just fine, especially at home. You can buy more expensive pumps, but this will work just fine. This is what I'm going to use. I can't find my other pump. I might have to get one, but for a quick fix, I'm just going to use the same thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to fill the transfer case with the ATF fluid up to this point. We're going to stick this into the bottle of the ATF, and then the hose runs into here, and we fill this up till it starts coming out, and that's the fill line. Pretty simple. Now is the transmission. I believe you can use a 24 millimeter on the drain plug, which is right here, or that might translate to 15/16. Probably get by with that. So I'm going to take this off. I've already broken it loose just to save a little time. Oh, it's going to be really tight. It's going to be one of those tighty loosey ones. There we go. And the fill plug, same concept as the transfer case. You just fill it up till it comes out of the transfer case fill plug. That is a Torx 55. That's tight. Now the downside to these little hand pumps that I have is they never fit the bottles properly, and it ends up that you make a complete mess, which I'm probably going to do with this. I'm going to try not to. I'm going to stuff this inside here. Let's see what I'm doing right. Okay, and then I'm going to start pumping. Okay, there we go. Now we got the right belt. We can put this on. This one we can just move off to the side. Move this one on. All right. So it looks like the wine is gone too. So it might have been a belt, which is great, even though that belt did not look too bad. It might have been glazed over. So not so fast. The whistle's back. You can hear it, but when I give it gas, it goes away. As I think about this, that's not belt wine. Hear it? That's not bearings. That's a whistle. That is air. This has an aftermarket air box on it, cold air box, whatever. And it also has a spacer in between the manifold and the throttle body. Excuse me. I bet you anything that is causing an air gas. Oh my goodness, that is annoying. All right. Let's set you down. All right. What is this? Yep. That little spacer right there. I don't know, what does that say? Some performance, something, something. I wonder if it came with the aftermarket air box right there. So what's happening is that's an air leak, and as air passes, obviously it's got to leak somewhere in that spacer right there, I believe. Probably a gasket or something like that. I'll let him know, let him decide on what he wants to do with it, because that is way annoying. Yep. All right, that's diagnosed. I'll let him know. He told me to advise, so I'll let him know and he can figure out what he wants to do. My suggestion, go back to stock. I don't think you're getting any horsepower from a 1-inch spacer on a 4-cylinder Jeep that has no power to begin with, but whatever.
So here it is, the Ford GT. These cars were produced between 2004 and 2006. I'm not sure, but I think the 2004 models were actually sold underneath the 2005 model year. They produced a total of 4,038 of these, 2027 in 05 and 2011 in 06. Now, of course, these harken back to the race cars of Le Mans produced by Carroll Shelby and Ford in the 1960s. The name GT40 came from how tall the car was, which also happened to be a height requirement for Le Mans regulations, 40 inches. Now this car is actually 44 inches tall, and I guess you could have named it the GT44, but they did not. Now, Ford did have the naming rights GT40 for the pre-production show cars from the company that owned those naming rights. But during production, the negotiations broke down between the two, and Ford wasn't going to pay the $40 million asking price for the GT40 name. Ask me, the company should have taken what they got, or at least what Ford maybe offered them, because Ford did not suffer from having to name the car Ford GT. But this was probably an example of rich people getting involved with too much money and their egos walking in, and after that all logic flies out the window. Now when these first came out, the first couple sold well over the $140,000 asking price. Then prices kind of settled down, and then in 2013 prices started really skyrocketing up. And a good example now of a base model sells around $400,000. That's not including the Heritage Edition, which now sells around $500,000 to $525,000. This design was in part to celebrate Ford's 100th anniversary that was coming up when it was being designed. And if you look closely at the left headlight, it actually says 100. That's not by accident. Now this car is not small. It's 77 inches wide, and that's not including the mirrors. It weighs between 3,300 pounds and 3,400 pounds. But still, Road and Track had it ripping down the track at 60 miles an hour at 3.5 seconds, 100 miles an hour at 8.6, and a standing quarter mile at 11.8 at 120 miles an hour. Top speed, 200 to 205 miles an hour. And how did it do this? It took its aluminum 5.4 liter 32 valve V8, fitted with dry sump lubrication to place it lower in the chassis, included a Eaton supercharger, tweaked the cam to get a little bit more lift and duration out of it, and pumped out 550 horsepower at 6,500 revs, 500 foot-pounds of torque at 4,500 revs. Mated this to a Ricardo 6-speed transmission and a helical LSD 3.36 final drive rear end. And somehow, Ford was able to eke out 19 miles per gallon on the highway and a combined mileage of 14 miles per gallon. Not that anybody really cared. And of course, the aftermarket world couldn't help but get involved in this game. Tuners to the likes of Hennessy and others have been able to squeak out more horsepower of this engine, different superchargers, larger pulleys, and a mapping of the tune. There's even been recorded twin turbo versions that went over 300 miles an hour. This was relatively a short addition to an excellent car. Current prices really reflect that. In 2017, Ford came out with a second generation. But this time they caught on, and prices started out about $500,000. They immediately skyrocketed to 1.5, held that for a while, but recently have come back down to the $1 million range for an excellent example. They also caught up with the times with technology. Now we have 2 less cylinders, but we have more performance. Just kind of shows you where things are going and how technology evolves and how we get better and better.